Hi everybody, this is Greg Harding, and thanks for joining me once again in this series of 3 on looking at perspective control. Trying not to use Photoshop, or at least giving you some alternatives to Photoshop. So in part 1 we looked at Lightroom and Lightroom 5 and the controls that we have in that. And then we progressed on in part 2 to DxO perspectives. And we looked at some of the features that standalone little piece of software provides. Now, in this session, we're going to look at Photoshop and consider whether or not we're going to get a better result than using one of the other 2 softwares that I've already described. So what I've done so far is just to export this file just out so that we're using Creative Cloud, and I will now show you, jump to Photoshop, and you can see that file just sat here without any corrections to it. So in Photoshop itself, you can see, Photoshop is a very masterful tool. It's grown over the many years with lots of great designers, and the layouts are getting bigger and bigger, and there's more and more tools underneath each of these. And so to actually do a crop perspective, we have to find the crop. So we have to go to the crop tool, but it's not. In previous versions we were able to click the perspective button up here. Now it's sort of hidden underneath the submenu, so now we have the perspective crop tool here. It's fairly straightforward. You pull out a crop as though you were going to crop the image, but instead of seeing just the crop boundaries, we now see a grid, and then you can grab the little corner nodes and pull them around until they match up. Now, I do like the grid feature on Photoshop because it does give you some nice lines to line up to. Like DxO perspectives, you've got these lines that you can actually match the side of the building to, and that's all we were trying to do is to encourage it to find straight lines that would normally be straight, but actually, because we've photographed it with a wide-angle lens and we're too close to the building, and we haven't got a 5.4 camera to knock out to pull up the converging verticals. That's what we get. So this is what we're trying to pull out in post-production. So once we've matched the lines up to the sides of the buildings as before, we just commit the crop, and you can see it does a pretty good job actually. To me that's a fraction over that, but that's probably my interpretation, my lining up of the grids. So let's just have another go at that. I'm going to line this up slightly better, or at least attempt to. But you can see it's a very simple interface, but it's finding it in the first place. The Photoshop is such a big program these days. It takes quite a bit just to get your head around where all the hidden features are, and then how to use them, of course. I actually think there's not a great deal of difference between the conversions between DxO Optics, Lightroom 5 and Photoshop. So personally speaking, I wouldn't want to jump into Photoshop to do it now. There was a time where you didn't have another choice and you had to. But now, there looks like we've got some very much more non-destructive techniques to use, and we should use them. So, I think in summary, all of the 3 products I've spoken to will do the job, will do them very well. Photoshop is quite expensive, I think most would agree, but then it does a whole lot more than just correcting perspectives. DxO Optics is a very, very cheap and cheerful means of just doing one job, so you might want to look at that as well. But for the price of a cup of coffee, it's a very, very neat tool. And if you do a lot of them, then maybe, that's the tool for you. But for me, I'm going to continue using Lightroom 5. I find that Lightroom, if we jump back to there now, Lightroom's got a lot of great features built into it. We can do some very, very simple transitions very quickly, without having to jump in and out of programs. It's all here. This is what I use to do all of my post-processing pretty much. And I think it's a great tool. So I'm going to stick with Lightroom 5. It's up to you guys to make your own decisions, but check them out and tell me what you think. So until next time, thanks very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.